Hi, this is Miss Litton, and this is our lunchtime 7th period review of Chapter 12, the cardiovascular system. I want you to know, because I don't want to have to rewrite my quiz between now and when I'm in Portland. Originally, remember I told you I would do the hyperdoc first? Oh, wait, maybe I did. Never mind. I don't know. I take away everything. Never mind. La, la, la. So the first, it's not starting out well. The first thing we need to talk about is homeostasis. So we learned about that a long time ago, right? Trying to keep your body at some set point, even though your environment is changing. And we talked about two types of feedback. We talked about positive and negative feedback. Negative feedback, we were saying this is where it's keeping it at a constant. Okay, and so whatever response you have, you're repressing it, right? So if the sugar goes up high, then the response is to bring it back down. If it goes down low, it's to bring it back up. You're trying to keep it at some sort of constant. Whereas when you're talking about positive feedback, then whatever that stimulus is, like the baby's head pushing against your cervix, it's causing the contractions to increase, which makes the baby's head push more against the cervix, and so on and so on and so on. It amplifies the response until some significant event like giving birth. Okay? So that was the difference between positive and negative feedback. Do you have any questions you want to talk about that? Okay. So what would cruise control on your car be? Positive or negative feedback?
Negative.
Negative feedback. And if I was like, you were late and I yelled it and I said something to you about it, and then you argued with me, and then I yelled louder, and then you argued some more, so I yelled louder. Positive. Maybe that's ever played out with you in your home. What would that be? Positive feedback. Yeah. I don't know. I'm just guessing. All right. Then the key things we need to know in this chapter, which we've reviewed many times, is structure and function. Right? What are the things we have? What's their job? How does that relate? So we have focused on blood vessels and the variations in blood vessels depending on what they are doing. We've looked at the pathways that the blood flows through the heart. We have talked about why the blood moves, the force on the blood due to the heart. We've talked about veins working against gravity, and we have talked about how skeletal muscles keep that blood flowing in the veins. We've talked about the exchange of all nutrients, gases, oxygen, waste at the capillary system. I'm just hitting all the big ticket items so you remember all the things to review. And then we went through things like what is your pulse, what's blood pressure, what's your heartbeat, what are you hearing, what's the energy, the depolarization on the heart in order to make the heart beat, and how could we measure that with an EKG? And then we kind of differentiated between the systemic and pulmonary circuits, and specifically out at the systemic circuit, we talked about the importance of like the heart and the small intestines and the liver with the hepatic portal vein. And then last but not least, we got into the details of what happens at the capillary and that exchange between hydrostatic and osmotic pressure. And then we went into things like varicose veins, what's in the blood, the contents of the blood, the function of the blood cells, and then we went into some do's and don'ts and some diseases. Okay, so that's like a lot of different topics on that one thing. So I'll try to get through all of them. We'll just review them quickly. So why don't we start with the song one more time? Okay, so here we go. I know you're eating lunch today. You can just mumble it. Here we go. Arteries go away from the heart, veins go towards. Okay, now let's pause right there. Arteries go away, veins go towards. So what does that tell us about the structure of arteries and veins?
It tells us that veins have to have something that will bring them back.
Help bring the blood back. And what is that going to be?
Valves.
Valves. Good. So structurally, they have valves to help with the flow back. What could we say about arteries?
Arteries have to be thicker so they can like push it through more because
they can
it has to go from a
Withstand the pressure and not say push, just say snap back, right? Okay, so you have to withstand the pressure because arteries go away. They got to take the force on the blood, right? And we can measure that force. It's called your blood pressure. And you put your systolic pressure over your diastolic, yeah? Okay, so go again. Arteries go away from the heart. Veins go towards. Arteries, arterioles, capillaries in the middle, venules, veins. So when we say arteries, arterioles, you can have an arterial end of a capillary bed, right? Okay, then capillaries in the middle, that's where all exchange occurs, and that's because those capillaries are what?
One cell thick.
One cell thick. So let me jump to a capillary. Come here, my little capillary. All right, so when we're at the capillary, okay, at the arterial end of the capillary, is the blood pressure going to be high or low? High at the arterial end, and it's going to be lower at the venular end. And when I say hydrostatic pressure, I mean force on the blood due to the what? Heart. Okay? Due to the heart. And so if we look at it, this hydrostatic pressure over the course of the capillary bed, it's going to drop off. Now, how many cells thick is the capillary? One cell. So there's little spaces between the cells. And so when the blood pressure, it's like a sieve if you had spaghetti, right? Spaghetti is like the red blood cells and the white blood cells, and the water going through the sieve is like your plasma. Oh, which reminds me, what is dissolved in plasma that we're pushing out right now? Remember road trip. Here we go. Gases, nutrients. Say it together so everybody can think. If we do it a little bit slower, then we get everybody. Okay, start at the beginning. Gases, nutrients. Let's be healthy. Proteins. Let's not. Salts. Nitrogenous waste. Hormones. Vitamins. See? So you didn't even look at it. That's what gets pushed out, okay, in the little gaps between the cells. That's what gets pushed out due to the hydrostatic pressure. Now, we need to recover fluids, otherwise all of our tissues would swell due to all that excess fluid. So your osmotic pressure is what brings it back in, because we know water must flow from the hypo. So it's going to flow from the hypotonic environment, okay, outside to the hypertonic environment inside. So here at the venule end, we have more of it going into the capillary bed, where at the arterial end, due to the hydrostatic pressure, we have more going out. Both pressures are there the entire time of the capillary bed. It's just I don't know just what happened. At the arterial end, you have a louder voice in the hydrostatic pressure saying going out, but then it drops. So by the time you're at the venule end, you're recovering that fluid. I'm going to come right to you in just 1 second. Any fluid you can't recover, that gets picked up by your lymphatic system, that excess tissue fluid, and it gets returned to your circulatory system at your left and right subclavian vein. But before it does that, it has to go through some what? Lymph nodes. And that's where the policemen are going to hang out for your immune system to make sure that everything's okay in your body. Yes?
Okay, so does the plasma do osmosis and go into like an area between any blood flow to the...
Okay, so what will happen is, if I made this bigger real quick, okay, so the plasma that comes out will bathe these cells right here, and then the oxygen that's at a higher concentration outside the cell will go to a lower concentration inside the cell. CO2 that's lower inside will go outside, and that'll get recovered at the venule end. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. So you've got two diffusion things that need to happen. First of all, you got to get out of the capillary, and then you've got to get into a cell. Either way, you're going to be crossing a membrane, yeah? All right, now, so we said arteries go away from the heart, veins go towards, arteries, arterioles, then what did we say? Capillaries in the middle, venules, veins. What happens if our venules, veins get like blocked in some way, or things in our body push against those veins so we can't circulate? What could we get? Varicose veins. Varicose veins. So varicose veins are when what you're supposed to happen is the skeletal muscle contracts and compresses the vein, and then it's going to want to squirt the blood in both directions. But what keeps it going in one direction is the what? Valves. The valves keep the blood going in one direction. And then when the muscle relaxes, when this expands back out, it's going to want to suck the blood back into it, just like what we saw in the heart. But that blood coming back triggers the doors so they slam shut. But if our doors weaken, that's when we get those varicose veins. I won't show you the super gross. And that's when the valves weaken and then the blood starts to pool. So that would be when you have trouble with that. Okay? Now, capillaries and varicose veins, right? Then we go, what? Heart, body, heart, lungs, heart, stomach, heart, pulmonary. Good. So when we look at those two circuits, which we did right here, yeah? Okay? We could see, we went heart, what did we say? Heart, systemic. So here, this right here, okay, leaving the left ventricle, what vessel leaves the left ventricle right here?
The right and left pulmonary arteries.
Left ventricle is where we're at.
Like what, aorta?
Aorta. Good girl. Okay, so this right here would be your aorta. And then you have regular old arteries, arterioles, right? And then capillaries in the middle. This would be where your capillaries are. If where you're going out to in your systemic circuit happens to be your heart, what do we call that circuit? Coronary circuit. Because you have coronary arteries and what? Coronary veins, right? So we looked at that. We looked at the flow of blood through the heart. And we said if you get blockage in one of those arteries, that would be what? Hashtag good, hashtag bad. Bad. And then you'd have to get a what kind of surgery? Bypass, or you have to get a stent put in of some sort. Okay? What if instead of going to the heart, we're going to the intestines? Where will we go after we leave the intestines before we start heading back?
The liver.
We will go to the liver, and then the liver will return our blood. And that, remember, we called the hepatic portal vein. Okay, so the blood's going into the small intestines. If when it goes to the small intestines, there's a lot of nutrients there, then those nutrients are all going to be in that hepatic portal vein. And that hepatic portal vein is going to go to the liver, and what's the liver going to do?
Not like any nutrients, but like store.
It'll store. It'll take glucose and store it as glycogen. And if it's all full up, then it'll store it as fat. Good. If you haven't eaten for a while, so the blood coming from the capillaries here in your hepatic portal vein is low, then the liver will put those nutrients that it has stored into your blood before it goes back. And if there's no nutrients in the liver, then it'll go get it from your fat. Exactly. Okay? And then it'll go back. All right? So we talked about those two circuits. So heart, body, right? And we heart, systemic. Then we come back in veins. What's the name of the veins here? Coming into the right right atrium.
The SVC and the IVC.
Yes, the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava. Does that make sense? Then it's going to go in the right atrium. What's the name of this valve right here? Tricuspid. And what was this one over here?
Bicuspid.
See how smart you are? Okay, right atrium, tricuspid, right ventricle. Then when it goes out of the right ventricle, what's the name of those guys right there?
The right, left pulmonary.
Yeah,
arteries.
left and right pulmonary arteries. And arteries go away from the heart. Notice what kind of blood it is. Deoxygenated. And it's going to go to the capillaries around the little teeny tiny microscopic air sacs. Do you remember what those are called? Close. Alveoli.
So off.
Alveoli.
Because I remember that, like,
Instead of ricola, go alveoli. Say that. Alveoli. It might help you one more time. Alveoli. Good. And then at those capillaries, they're going to pick up oxygen. And then you're going to come back, oxygenated blood. And what's this right here?
Right, left pulmonary vein.
Yes. Stop it. Good. And then you're in the left atrium, bicuspid valve, left ventricle, aorta. Now what valve is right there between the left ventricle and the aorta?
The semilunar.
Yes. Semilunar. And it's over here as well. Yeah? Semilunar. So what's good is, I don't know what I wrote up there, is when you can apply your learning from the other material to some new graph or diagram, because that means you have ownership over it, right? Okay, so heart, what is it? Heart, body, heart, lungs, heart, systemic, heart, pulmonary. Atria collect and ventricles pump. Well, that makes me think about the picture of the heart, okay, which we know like this, which we can simplify into 4 chambers like this. So you just told me all those vessels. Do you need me to review that, or do you feel pretty strong about that?
I feel good.
Feeling good? Okay, good. And so you're going to get a picture like this on your quiz, and I'm going to point to something, and I'm going to say, tell me what it is. Say my name, say my name.
Is it
I
gonna be
am
like
Vina
that right here?
Cava. I don't know what I'm going to put on there. That's a good one, though. That's a good one. I am the right atrium. I sing to my students, Stranger Dangers. Okay, so you would know everything on here, yes? Feel good? Okay, so make sure you remember the parts of the heart. And then the last thing we said is valves keep the blood going in one direction. Valves keep the blood going in one direction. And then this makes me think about the valves here in the heart. And the lub dub, lub dub, lub dub, lub dub. And the first sound is the AV valve slamming shut when the ventricle contracts. And the second sound is the semilunar valves when the ventricles relax. Ooh, contract, relax. What am I thinking there? What are good words for that? Systole and diastole. And how am I going to remember that?
Die.
Yeah. If you relax too much, you will die. And then I'm wondering now, it makes me think about what makes the heart move. Why does it contract like that? So then I want to look at the conduction system of the heart, because that's all of a sudden becoming very important to me. So now I'm looking here. And I know the pacemaker of the heart is called the SA node. Pacemaker, okay, of the heart is called the SA node. And it sends a wave of depolarization across the atria. So they both contract at the same time, the right and left atrium. And when that wave of depolarization hits this node, what's that node? AV, because it's between the atria and the ventricles, just like the AV, right? Tricuspid, bicuspid, yeah. Okay. Then it sends a wave of depolarization down the middle of the heart, which is called the? Same here. Septum. Mm-hmm. And then up, these are called Purkinje fibers, which makes the ventricles contract. And you can measure that, okay? If you can put on some little electrodes, you can measure that. And we know P represents what?
The atrium to the ventricle.
Yeah, the atria contracting is the P. QRS is when? And what also is happening at that time? Atria relaxing, diastole, good. And then the T is when they're both relaxed. But specifically that marking on there represents the ventricles relaxing. And then you think, well, what's telling it to beat again? So what really controls the SA node? And then I have to think about the brain and the medulla oblongata. Then it makes me think, how would I know that my heart is beating? Because I could take my pulse, and my pulse is just the expansion of my arterial walls against my fingers or whatever device I'm using, yeah? And it's doing that because the heart is beating and making it expand. And then, yes?
What's the difference between the pulse rate and the blood pressure?
That's exactly what I was going to. Pulse is just the speed at which your heart is beating, okay? The pressure is measuring the force, how strong that force is on the heart, and specifically it's measuring your left ventricle, okay? And because that's the one that's sending the blood out to the systemic circuit, and so it's how forceful it is, and like how hard it's hitting. Like remember we drew force vectors right, last year in FOSS. So it's how strong of a force. Is that a big arrow or a little arrow? How strong is that force on that blood? And so we know that when we look at the systolic pressure, that force is going to be the one written on top, like 120/70. And the diastolic is when the ventricle is in diastole and it doesn't have as much pressure. So it's pressure, pressure, pressure. Okay? Good. I think we hit amazingly. I'm looking. We did all of that, and we did that. Oh, one thing we didn't talk about is the hemoglobin. How many molecules of hemoglobin do we have in each red blood cell? 250 million. You got it. And each one of those hemoglobin molecules can hold 4 oxygen molecules, because at the center of those hemoglobin molecules is something called what? Iron. So you need the iron to bind to the oxygen in the hemoglobin. That's the controlling factor. And so you can get 4 oxygen molecules on each hemoglobin molecule. So 4 times 250 million is 1 billion. So you could have 1 billion molecules of oxygen within every single red blood cell. Okay? If you don't have enough hemoglobin, what's that called?
Anemic.
Yeah, you're anemic and you're weak and tired. So red blood cells, their job is to carry what? Oxygen. And then your white blood cells, their job is to fight. And there's all different ways to fight. Cell-to-cell combat, releasing antibodies, releasing chemicals. We're going to learn about that when we do the immune system. There's another formed element. What's the other formed element I'm looking for?
Plasma.
Not plasma is the fluid part. Formed element, yeah.
Platelets.
Yes, platelets, and that's with blood clotting. So if you cut yourself, if you have damaged tissues, platelets will start to form, and it will trigger a series of reactions and clotting factors. So it's like this clotting factor triggers this one, which triggers this one, which triggers this one, and it ultimately ends with what?
The web.
Yeah, the fibrin. That fibrin across the wound. What?
We have 10 minutes.
Okay, where the red blood cells get stuck. Does that make sense? Okay, then the last thing we talked about is what are these different diseases, like high blood pressure, okay, is when the force on, high blood pressure could cause a stroke, but remember, stroke is actually when you have dead what?
Brain cells.
Dead brain cells, yeah. Hypertension is high blood pressure. We talked about a stroke already. We talked about if your heart doesn't have oxygen, then you can have a heart attack. And we talked about ballooning of blood vessels. That would be an aneurysm. And I had some questions right here. If you want to check this right here. Go in as what you're looking forward to this weekend. I had trouble loading Hello Smart earlier, so it's possible I will have trouble again. Go away, Max. Try more. It looks like you're getting in okay.
Oh, someone left. Snowy.
Bye-bye, Snowy. Okay, I'm going to start it. And I'm going to show the questions so you can see them at home. Name the disorder, blood clot in the coronary artery. What will that cause? What will that cause? Number 2, portion of your brain dies as a result of a clot or ruptured blood vessel. Write your answers down at home so you can practice. High blood pressure is number 3. Number 4, name the disorder, buildup of plaque. And number 5, ballooning of a blood vessel. Write your answers down at home. We believe in you. Commit. 3, 2, 1. Okay, I'm waiting. Are you guys' lips dry? My lips are perpetually dry these last 2 weeks. They're like a chopped monkey. Whatever a chopped monkey looks like. I should have paused. Are you ready? Come on now.
I'm just gonna commit.
Yeah, same.
You commit?
Even if they're not right.
Okay, here we go. Blood clot in the coronary artery, heart attack, heart attack. Okay, number 2, yes, stroke. Number 3, high blood pressure is hypertension. Now, Look at me for a minute so you differentiate. Atherosclerosis can lead to high blood pressure. But when you're specifically talking about high blood pressure, you're talking hypertension. Okay? And then somebody put C. No. High blood pressure can lead to a heart attack. But when I'm talking about high blood pressure, that's when I'm talking about hypertension. Number 4, plaque is atherosclerosis. Atherosclerosis can lead to all of these things. All of those things is what it can lead to. But when you have plaque in there, it's called atherosclerosis. Ballooning of a blood vessel is aneurysm. Atherosclerosis can lead to that. So you just need to differentiate between those two. Okay, the end. I love you. Make good choices. I will miss you for most of next week. Do well. Follow your sub-plans. You're smart and wonderful. You're welcome, sweetheart.